Conspiracies and creepypastas have always been a part of gaming and especially early internet culture. Stuff like Lavender Town Syndrome, Mario being secretly evil, Star Fox having their legs cut off and replaced with prosthetic ones, despite Miyamoto saying that's not the case at all, Lord X and his Sinister Minds album. Okay, what is even going on in the Sonic.exe fandom nowadays? Many indie games from the 2010s heavily leaned into that, FNAF and Doki Doki Literature Club being some of the more notable examples. But I feel like the games that capture that vibe the best are Undertale and Deltarune. Of course there's the whole mystery around Gaster, which is still a huge deal to this day, but with Deltarune specifically, conspiracies seem to be ingrained in the game's story, whether it be about characters haunting the narrative, police investigations gone too far, or evil group chats. Also everyman.
He's just standing there, menacingly!
Deltarune is a game all about conspiracies, theories and parallels, and how they can shape the way we view or even change the world. That's honestly one of the reasons I love theorizing about Deltarune so much. It's all full of parallels. It's like the game is daring you to try and find another way to look at it, despite how much it's trying to tell you that your choices don't actually matter, and despite how dumb some of these connections may seem. That said, the aforementioned conspiracies are all very important, but are not what I would call the biggest. There is another element inside of Deltarune that, while seemingly unassuming, actually seems to have a big presence. Not as important as something like Friend, but arguably on a much bigger volume and much more ingrained in internet conspiracy culture, forcefully trying to insert its friend in the people's heads through mediocre products that are everywhere, and by being the face of many playground rumors and conspiracies, and by also being somehow one of the biggest parallels to Friend in the entire game. So what, you just described the average fast food chain? Yeah, take a wild guess what this video is gonna be about. Hello? There, people kept calling me Dracula in my last video, so I guess this is gonna be my OC now. I have some new fangs and whatever the hell this thing on my neck is. I'll call this OC Bat Tat. See what I did here? Oh my god, I just realized Bat Tat may be a pun on Matpat. Anyways, for this video I'll try to analyze pretty much every single thing about ICE that exists both inside and outside Deltarune. The appearances, the merch, the employees, but I'm also going to analyze some other things that feel unrelated but that are still somewhat connected to IC as a whole, and with how this brand inserts itself into anything really, you can expect some of the minor stuff to be just as noteworthy as the main appearances, if not even more so. While many people know about ICE and some of its shenanigans already, with some videos already putting ICE in a more important role, even if not in an entirely serious way, I don't think a video analyzing everything ICE related has been made yet, and I mean everything even remotely connected to ICE. By the end, you will feel the pain and suffering ICE has caused me. This will be your deathbed, and the last thing you see, an ICE pain scale! So hopefully this video is gonna succeed at that, even if it's gonna sound completely off the wall insane half the time, but hey, that's the beauty of theorizing, right? Plus, this is an ICE video, everything's gonna be grasping at straws, basically, so you can afford getting a little freaky with it, if you know what I mean. Okay, let's get started now, I guess. Despite IC being a Deltarune original character, the first appearance of IC wasn't actually in Deltarune but in Undertale. One of Papyrus' puzzles is an ICE crossword puzzle named Monster Kids Word Search, brought by Sans. This is basically the only appearance of ICE in Undertale, and it comes from Sans, who a lot of people believe to be actually coming from Deltarune, which I also believe. Before moving on to Deltarune, I want to point out some things first. The first two columns actually seem to showcase all of Undertale's major areas in order. Fall and Monster are the ruins and Toriel. Winter and Skeletons are Snowdin and Sans/Papyrus. Spring and Mermaid are Waterfall and Undyne. Summer and Robot are Hotland and Metaton. I do wonder why the first word of the second column is just monster though, while the others are more specific. Is Toriel more connected to IC compared to the others? Honestly probably doesn't mean much, although it will be very funny if later on I realize this is actually important. As for the third column, I really have no idea, but the only thing that could make some sense is the fourth word, hot, because of Hotland. But why are cigars mentioned twice? And what the hell, it's just called Felbreber. It's not even spelled correctly. I guess that's on brand with anything icy. Maybe it's a word scramble. Papyrus does mention Junior Jumble right after, which is a word scramble, saying they're harder than crossword puzzles. Is Junior Jumble also Ice-E related? I wouldn't completely rule it out, although I can't really see how to connect it to Ice-E in any meaningful... Do you guys just see that? What the hell was that? There's also a fun event associated with this word search at values 56 and 57, where Ice-E's speech bubble gets removed and a snowman appears on the right with the word nightmare. I know for a fact this is gonna make me lose my sanity later on. And that's a wrap for Undertale. There is one last reference to Ice-E before Deltarune came out, though, which I have barely seen anybody mention, which comes from a 2017 Tumblr post. In it, Toby says that Ice-E is not real, only then say that Ice-E is real. Also that dinosaur oatmeal is real. By the way, I tried to click on the link, but it leads to... Yeah, no, it's not some Shattered Caster related stuff. Dinosaur oatmeal is supposed to be Papyrus' favorite food, plus there was an actual page here when Toby made that Tumblr post. I inserted the link on the Wayback Machine, and there were several snapshots showing some low quality PNG of some green dino eggs oatmeal stuff. Green eggs. Oh god, it actually is Caster related! Is Caster Susie's dead? Okay, why am I even talking about Susie oatmeal? This has nothing to do with Ice-E. I guess this is gonna set the tone for the whole video. Also in 2016, Toby posted this. Okay, that's pretty much it. Let's actually get into Deltarune now. Starting from... Chapter 1 doesn't have any Ice-E references inside. I was saying, no Ice-E references inside of its main Dark World. Anyways, all Ice-E references for this chapter can be found in the Light World. Before talking about the actual pizzeria, let's get the minor stuff out of the way. If when talking about Susie to Noelle, you say that she eats chalk, Noelle will state that Kris is teasing her, like when they told her Ice-E was real and eats kids. Nothing to add about that. In the Dreamworld bathroom, there's an Ice-E pizza flavored body spray, which belongs to Asriel. I also have nothing to add about that. Again? What importance does some deodorant even have? Let's continue, I guess. In the alley, two graffiti can be seen, one depicting Everyman and another depicting Ice-E. Both characters are pretty much cryptid tier characters, with the exception that with Everyman, I don't want to have anything to do with him. In the library's teen zone, there's a drawing of Ice-E wearing a headband, which makes Kris have a feeling of immense relief. It could be because of the motto, where teens can be kids. Maybe Kris feels nostalgic for when they were younger, which would make perfect sense considering the Dreamworlds are pretty much on the brink of collapse. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're just happy to see Ice-E's mascot. In general, Kris seems to have an ironic obsession with Ice-E, similar to how people seem to have an ironic obsession with Triple T of Freddy Fazbear. This will become clear as we go through more and more Ice-E sightings in this video. Finally, in the hospital, there's an Ice-E pain scale near one of the employees who has suffered some pizza-related injuries. How the hell do you even hurt yourself with pizza? Toby did say in the 6th anniversary stream that
he burned his hands on pizza sauce. Or something.
Is this foreshadowing for how Kris is gonna lose their hand? Getting it burned? Anyway, the pain scale in the hospital is pretty funny to me, cause the maximum pain depicts the regular mascot, sweated and all. This is a reference to how Ice-E is in constant pain and agony. The last thing I want to discuss before getting to the actual pizzeria is QC's diner. It's not really Ice-E related, but I just find it very weird how QC doesn't seem concerned in the slightest about the big, evil pizza empire next door. Okay, to be fair, it sounds like a decent idea having a diner near fast food, and it doesn't seem like Ice-E has many customers anyways. In fact, the only actual customer inside Ice-E is Ice Wolf, who is also a customer in QC's diner here in chapter 1, so what gives? How is Ice-E affording all this merch anyways if there's just a single customer? Like, I highly doubt they have infinite wealth. Also, why are Ice-E's employees acting like customers in QC diner? And what is the forgotten man doing in there? There's something fishy going on. People won't believe me, but I know for a fact QC is part of Ice-E's conspiracies. I just cannot prove it. Look, QC is also mentioned by Dexter. She has to be important in some way. I'm not crazy. You are. You'll see. They all see. They will all see what's really happening. Where the hell's your boss, Ice-E? Okay, fine, let's actually talk about the pizzeria now. The pizzeria itself is weird. the only time it's actually open is in chapter 2. In chapter 3 you don't get to roam around hometown, at least not in a non-scripted way, so you can't visit the pizzeria. In chapter 4 they need to do some renovations. In chapter 1 though, the entrance locked, but all of the employees are outside to advertise the locale. I guess it's because the chef is hospitalized, but it's still pretty weird. Most of the info on the work environment can be gathered from Pizza Pants in chapter 1. Other than talking about how he misses Azrael, he remarks that working at ICE is hell, and he goes insane when explaining that they changed the letter I in pizza with E. I guess this is why the U in Jaskful Fubleber is substituted with an E in the word search. He also goes on to describe his co-workers. Blue Ears, soft serve obsessed, no concept of personal space, keeps accidentally pouring slushies on me and jiggling. This one is actually the nice green guy from Undertale, the warrior. Thankfully absent to the pizza-related injuries, constantly terrorizing customers with war chants. Purple guy. Man, that guy, you gotta... Actually, does that guy even work here? Seriously though, in chapter 2, that guy can be found in the town hall. In chapter 4, they work under QC, what the hell? QC again? Why does that guy keep inserting themselves in the most random places? I guess ironically, that's on brand with IC. And with Purple guy. Anyways, Pizza Pants describes his co-workers as a rocks gallery, which is pretty interesting. There's a popular headcanon going around at the music gallery that plays during the more major boss fights, more specifically the King, Queen and the Titan, alludes to a rocks gallery, basically a collection of villains. Although, considering the prophecy panel, it looks to be more like an art gallery, with Friend's silhouette behind it, whatever the hell that means. Rocks gallery does also mean a collection of mugshots though, which is what Pizza Pants probably meant in this case, so I guess those pictures in the panel could be mugshots. Purple Guys Chapter 5 Secret Boss confirmed. One last thing I want to add about Pizza Pants, for now, is while he doesn't seem to smoke, Burger Pants does, and considering they are the same character, it's very likely Pizza Pants smokes too. So is it possible the random double cigar mentioned in the word search is because Pizza Pants inserted them in that specific one cause he was bored? Also, wait a second, why is it called Monster Kids Word Search? Are they assuming humans aren't welcome in hometown with Kris in it? IC's #1 fan? Humans! They only think about QC. They're gooners! Oh god, Monster Search are pink and yellow, I'm going to lose it. Dude, it's also in the title logo in Hometown's locale, I'm actually gonna lose it now! Anyways, now that I'm talking about the word search again, I guess this is the perfect segue to discuss Jumbling from the Junior Jumble, which I mentioned could have some blues connections with ICE. There are two mentions of Jumbling in Deltarune, and they both come from Chapter 1's Dark World. So that's where the sound was coming from. Alright, Dark World Elephant addressed. Thanks, let's continue. The first comes from the Dice Brace, an unique item that can be obtained from one of those sweet puzzles in chapter 1. Most of the discourse surrounding it comes from what Ral say and Noel say when you make them equip it. People have theorized Kris jumbled the word friendship to make it say find her, but I don't really see it. First, it's a dice brace, surely there are other letters on the other sides of the dices that can be jumbled to make even more words. Plus, there's no reason for Kris to even do this, unless this is some sort of secret message that they don't want us to see regarding Dess's disappearance and the bunker, which will track with what they do at Noel's house. But still, I really don't see the point in showing that sentence to Noel, unless it was supposed to be some sort of sleeper agent activation message for her, which clearly didn't work out, although Kris isn't really that great at being hero spawn, but I digress. The actual reason I highlighted the dice brace was another, and it's because of these guys called blocklers, a B1 and a O1, standing behind the dice brace chest. Now, I'm perfectly aware this is going to sound like the dumbest thing ever, kinda like the papyrus body shape debate from my last video, but I swear they are somehow connected to IC. They are both light blue, with a cubish trapezoid shape, rounded corners, and they both have a letter gimmick where they substitute some letters with their own one. B and O blockers with the letters B and O, and IC with the letter E. I have no idea what this could mean, but I swear it means something! I swear it means something! Also, at the end of chapter 1 they spelled the word boob. You know who else gets described with the word boob? The second and final mention of gambling comes from Jevil, which, okay, I know Jevil was probably talking about friend or cousin in this case. To be fair though, IC and friend are very similar in a way, as they're both some sort of cryptids inserting themselves in anything, but one's a somewhat iconic brand mascot, and the other's photo-negative Mickey. Jokes aside, the connections between IC and friend actually go a bit further than that, but I'm gonna get to that later. There are actually two more things related to gambling, but despite not using that word specifically, they use the word mixed up instead. They are still both about scrambling words, but they're not from chapter 1, they're from chapters 3 and 4, so I'll save them for later. Keep that in mind, alright? Many things for later, many things for later. Also, Toby shared this art on the 6th anniversary stream.
Maybe you didn't want to see this.
Okay, I believe that's all for pre-chapter 2 stuff. Let's move on to... Chapter 2's appearances of Ice-E are all pretty minor, so I'll try to make this section brief. Also because chapter 3 is gonna be a heavy one, so be prepared. In the cyber world, there's a spelling puzzle where you have to spell the word Just Febreber. On a side note, I think it's pretty funny how each and every time this word appears, there's an extra E in it. First it was Just Febreber, then Just Febreber, and now it's Just Febreber, which rhymes with Nightmare Fredbear. Doing it correctly makes the success screen glitch out once IC appears and winks. Talking to Ralsei makes Susie reveal that it's Ice-E's catchphrase, and that Susie's a real IC head. She even knows about IC the movie, and this is Kris with it. Susie, I knew I liked you, dude. Although this makes me wonder, was the spelling bee organized by IC or something? If they make crosswords and allegedly word scrambles, could they be making spelling bees too? Also on a side note, but barely receiving those praises kind of remind me of Purple Soul's attack in the Omega Flowey fight. To be fair, even if that was the case, it doesn't add much to our discussion, plus the concept of good spelling is like one of the only things I see refuses to touch, so let's move on. Okay, sure, the spelling bee is also important. Somehow. No, I mean it's alright, just... okay, sure. Whatever. Good for you. In Noel's room inside Queen's mansion, there is an icy statue? Why is it fuzzy? Which took shape from Noel's search is icy real cryptid. If interacted with it, Kris steals it unprompted and puts it in the room in Ralsei's castle. Nothing to add about this one, just another showcase of Kris's obsession and of their icy pranks on Noel. In the light world at Sense Shop, there are two icy magazines, one about pizza pinups and another about low quality pizza JPEGs. This last one is going to be relevant in a bit. Now, the biggest IC highlight for chapter 2 is... So I was saying, the highlight is definitely... Okay, who the hell is knocking at such a late night? Alright, I'm back. Weirdly enough, there was no one at the door, but except for this odd controller. I feel like someone really wants me to use this thing. Anyways, I was saying, the highlight is definitely the pizza location, as chapter 2 is the only chapter where it's actually open. Inside, there's a world full of wonders, fast food workers, a single customer, the warrior, Joyce, red flavor, which I'm pretty sure got stolen from the church, chocolate pizza, which melts in your pants, not in your mouth. What else, sure. The most popular thing coming out of this though is definitely the Pizza Pants sub-story with his girlfriend, Pizzarina, who's actually bratty pulling a prank on him, and her profile picture? A low quality pizza JPEG with a pizza bikini. I'm pretty sure she just took a photo from the magazines at Sense Shop. Wait, why aren't they selling guys say porn at Sense Shop? Who the hell would buy this? 7. Don't even joke, lad.
You alright, lad?
The only one who's happy about pizza pants is the nice cream guy. This is foreshadowing, by the way. I'm foreshadowing something. Also, dude, I swear this whole Pizzarina deal is like a Yakuza sub-story. Also, Purple guy's in the town hall now. So, that's it for chapter 2. This section was a bit too much video essay looks inside plot summary for my tastes. But forgive me, I really wanted to get through it quickly, except for you pizza pants. I'll take as much time as I want with you, as chapter 3 is where the big boy appearances are, and I'm eager to talk about them. But first, there is one last pre-chapter 3 appearance coming from the Spamton sweepstakes, an IC sighting from Noelle. Okay, this isn't that serious. She got scared because she thought the IC pizza box at home winked at her, and so Des burnt its eyes and threw it away somewhere only she knows. Not before Kris did one of their IC pranks on Noelle at the graveyard. Who the hell is reporting these sightings even? Like, who decides one day it's gonna be the life goal to write about each and every IC sighting in hometown? Why reporting the camera at me? Dude, it's not like I will spend the entire day talking about that damn pizza box. That would be stupid. No. What the hell do you mean the pizza box is important? Okay, let's not waste any time. Let's get the smaller stuff out of the way first. There's an IC commercial van as one of the prizes, which gets masked as a family van. Alright, makes sense, 10 as a TV, it makes sense they would be connected to a commercial van if they are the ones who show the commercial in the first place. Later on it can be found in the bonus zone behind another one of the prizes, in a cowboy hat curtain. In the Doom board, one of the physical challenges is they're coming out of the pipes. They're crawling out of the pipes. The popular consensus, which I also believe, is that those are Kris' butt bombs, presumably ICE ones, and that one day they threw too many of them in the toilet, causing the pipes to clog and start another fight between Toril and Asgore. Remember when I mentioned there was something connected to jumbling in chapter 3? What do you think it could be? Hint, it uses the word mixed up. That's right, it's the Forgotten Man's dialogue. I now read to you what it... Alright, you can stop chilling now. Wait a second, I recognize you. You're the spelling bee audience! The one barely won because of the December war! The one I suspect is IC related! They even make the exact same sound! Why do IC and 10 have... Not this time, Dumbo! Why do they have the same audience? Is it because of the commercial van? Is it because of the pipes? What the hell does this even mean? Alright, you know what, let's move on. What was I doing again? Alright, Forgotten Man dialogue. I ignore the various do you understand what I'm saying messages and only mention the relevant text. Once upon a time, the world looked like this. Well, the world changed, society was developed, the earth was covered in water, dinosaurs appeared. An ice age. Actually, there are still dinosaurs. Is it mixed up?
I'm back in the fucking building again!
In any case, this island is the only place left I can talk. But one day, this island will disappear, too. We may not meet again, in that case. Many people seem to either fixate on the Forgotten Man's schedule, while ignoring him pretty much spelling out the origins of the world, or at least the one between Kris and the Forgotten Man. I have my theories on what this means, and yes, I'm going to talk about them, but it will have to wait for later on in the video. Also, Azrael's deodorant is green now. This actually has some significance beyond just a green stare. Sorry to have underestimated you, pizza deodorant. Didn't know you were green now. You know what's also green and is also connected to that deodorant in a major way? Kris's green apple shampoo, of course. I'm not going to go in depth with the Kris and Apple's connection, as that's a topic for another video, but there is something I want to highlight. In a Famitsu interview, Toby reviewed various Mario movie branded soap. Please bear with me, I promise, this is important. One of them was the Green Luigi shower gel, which he mentioned smelled like apples. He then added that, and I quote, "Perhaps it represents Luigi's admiration for his older brother. Even though it's a green apple, deep down he wants to be a red apple, you know?" This is very interesting because it describes Kris very well. They always grew up under Azrael's shadow, with him being this hyper nerd who studies a lot and wins prizes. He's also very positively popular in hometown, while Kris is considered to be more of a local gremlin. It's clear they want to be more like Azrael, or at least like a monster. A popular example in favorite being the red horns headband, which they used to wear a lot as a kid. This is the gist of it. I don't really want to go into more detail as again that's beyond the scope of this video. Anyways, the point is, I feel like the same can be applied to Azrael too, considering they also have that green bat product, of course not on the same level as Kris though. It makes perfect sense if you think about it for a second. The game really tries to hammer into your head that Azrael is a very successful, smart guy, and his return from college is something that the game is building up a lot. And to that I want to say, Do you really think he's going to remain the exact same as before he went there? This constant talk of how he's this hyper nerd feels very intentionally put to subvert expectations. College changes people, and with him being far away from home for a long time, you would assume he feels a bit of nostalgia for it. We know from Alphys he talked a lot with Kris online before the internet outage. That's where the Apple shampoo parallel comes into play. While Kris really wants to be like Azrael, I think the same applies to him too a little bit. He always has the weight of expectations, of perfectionism, constantly pressing on him, while Kris has none of that in his eyes. And I feel like with Kris being the only one he communicates with that's from hometown, he slowly starts wanting to be more like them. This experience definitely also had an influence on that. We know they were very close together, and their messy and allegedly tomboyish demeanor complemented his shy and nerdy personality very well. Her disappearance definitely devastated him, and maybe he hoped this new college adventure could have helped him move on. But with Kris being a constant reminder of what life used to be for him, and Kris being kinda similar to this in a way, he needs to somehow fill that hole himself, rebuilding a broken family that's so distant from him, both in space and time. I personally believe Azrael is gonna return from the festival in chapter 5 and be less of a nerd and more of a prankster like Kris, and also be more like Tess. I imagine him introducing himself with the whole sense whoopee cushion in the hand trick or something. In general, this seems to be a common theme for how things are shaping up for chapter 5. For example, we know nothing about Papyrus other than what we know from Undertale, and Sans hints at us meeting him once Azrael returns from college, and just like with Azrael, I feel like he's going to subvert our expectations. There's also this deal with Asgore and how he wants to desperately prove to everyone what really happened and be a happy family again, which kinda parallels what I said earlier about Azrael, about rebuilding a broken family. Chapter 5 in general is shaping up to have this constant theme of what we think something's supposed to be versus what it actually is, so I believe it's no surprise that Toby really wants to keep this chapter specifically under wraps to let our expectations to the talking. It also perfectly parallels the constant theme of challenging fate in chapter 4, with the exception that in this case, chapter 5 is the antithesis to that. Sometimes it's better to not challenge fate. We cannot make everything as we want it to be, because to do so it means that we are going to inevitably hurt the ones we care about the most, and in turn remove their own personal freedom and identity just so that they can match what we expect from them and from the world around us. That's the lesson Asgore is gonna have to learn, and maybe Azrael too.
What a concept.
Okay, jokes aside, I do generally believe chapter 5 is going to generally feature those core themes. I just think it's very fun if I end up predicting this thanks to some pizza deodorant of all things. Anyways, I should really keep going now. There is an interesting mention of the word nightmare inside chapter 3, coming from Toriel if you manage to beat the night. While this is probably referring to Eram, and I have some words to say about them in a bit, I want to take this moment to start talking about snow. Don't worry, this is still IC related, just bear with me. Snow in general seems to be very much related to the concept of changing fate. Every time something goes off script, there is always snow of some sort accompanying it. The main example is of course the weirder out, but you can also see it here in chapter 3 with the TV snow covering everything. Considering that the night almost definitely came in late, I have a big feeling that everyone abandoning Tenna and the show ending wasn't supposed to happen according to Kris' plan, and so by extension the script of the Dark World, hence the TV snow metaphor. I believe Gerson himself directly mentioned this phenomenon, and soon an ocean of ink shall wash across the pages. But there is one thing that can override the dark. A white pen known as hope. If you have seen my previous video, again, I recommend watching it. Wink wink. Then you probably already know my stance on raw darkness, this darkness material with a white outline present in Titans and Friend for example, that seems to be mostly made of black balls, the ocean of ink that Gerson mentions. I believe it's contained in stone, which perfectly parallels eggs. I want to add a third element now though, snow. The white pen and icy stuff in general seems to be equal and opposite to raw darkness, mainly because one's black while the other's white, one's about destruction, the other's about creation. This also puts stone in an in-between position due to the grey color scheme. another parent to eggs added to the pile. This whole white pen deal makes me able to add another thing to the Chapter 5 pizza deodorant discourse from earlier. There's a popular theory that Deltarune's Dark Worlds are Undertale's areas in opposite order. New Hope and the Card Kingdom, cause they're both a castle. Core and the Cyber World, cause they're both futuristic. Outland and the TV World, cause they're both full of minigames and cause both are hot. Waterfall and the Dark Sanctuaries, cause of all the water and darkness motif, and because they're both full of lore. I wonder what Chapter 5 is gonna be. Yeah, the writing's pretty much on the wall. We are going to see the negative consequences of too much fiddling with fate, or too much white pen. By the way, I don't know how to make this flow well in the video, but I've recently watched a really great analysis called The Temptation of Christ. Among other things, one of the main points is that dogs, like Toby, seem to be associated with subversions, the white pen if you will. They are the temptation part of the analysis, as they are linked to Satan as they try to offer another path different from the main one. Susie is also linked to that, as she is like a dragon. Dragons being another symbol for Satan, of course. They are put in juxtaposition with skeletons like Gaster and my session friend, who's heavily linked to, well, Gaster. And they represent convention, fate, the ocean of ink. I highly recommend watching this analysis fully. It's really good. All of this puts IC in an interesting position. See? I told you it's still related to IC, cause I already jokingly mentioned how he's similar to Friend, as they are both cryptids, but the more I thought about it, the more I started genuinely believing that IC and Friend are equal and opposites to each other, one's a dog while the other's a cat. Of course, this goes beyond this surface level comparison, as highlighted by the Temptation of Christ discussed earlier. One is made of ice, or snow if you count Nightmare, the other is made of raw darkness. Both seem to be linked in a major way to Kris and Noelle. Both are connected to eggs. Yeah, no, the Green Dino X ultimately is not related to IC. I'll stop with a bit. I know, this is going to disappoint some of you, but sometimes we need to move on. Although it is Papyrus' favorite food. Papyrus is a skeleton. Skeletons versus dogs. It's all connected again. I never doubted you for a second, Dino Eggs. One's a cube, the other's made of circles. Or in the case of Nightmare, both are made of circles. Both seem to be linked to low quality media. I already talked to that of all the IC branded low quality products, plus IC the movie. But with Friend, it's a bit more subtle. They're connected to Cat Feathers, which did have a spin-off that's a low-quality ripoff of Dragon Blazers, according to Noelle. Plus, there are many minigames which are all pretty scuffed, except this one, which is the greatest piece of video game media ever. No bias whatsoever. I guess you could also say Cat Feathers, as it ends with C, is a connection to IC's bad grammar, plus the minigames titles like Jongler, which mean absolutely nothing. Finally, one's all about winking, the other's all about smiles. Ironic considering how darkness is all about eyes, while IC got his eyes burned to a crisp.
Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, friend.
Now, remember I put a pin on Eram earlier? I think it's finally time to talk about them. Right, I should have expected this. Wait, the controller from earlier. I'll be back soon, alright? Good, it's working. Wait, do I really need to get through the entire game just to show the thing I want? It's basically right at the end, plus the console is right there on the left. I don't want to move the entire camera setup. Dude, I really wish there was some sort of button that could make the game beat or something.
And that's why I invented the beat a game button. Yeah, all you do, if you're playing a really hard game, you just push the button and the game's beat. Let's try it out. Ooh, that's a hard game. Oh, man! Oh, shit! I'm getting my ass kicked!
Cool. Anyways, why do I want to talk about Eram? Cause they are the burnt IC pizza box. This is something that I kind of pieced together on my own, and surprisingly it made a lot of sense. Then looked online, and I've seen that some people theorized about this, but not that many, so I really want to give more visibility to this theory, and also give my own interpretations, my own additions, and make it slot together with everything else that I have already talked about. Funnily enough, this is one of the main reasons I wanted to make this video in the first place. I am aware of the new recently released Half-Breed Chaos video, at least at the time of writing this script, when they theorized that Eram is Ram, which while it makes a lot of sense, the idea of Eram being IC is so funny that I can't help but prefer this. Of course though, this means that I will have to put extra effort in validating this idea. This Fury's smoking gun is the song Burning Eyes. This of course is related to what Eram says at the end of the battle. There, that's what I wanted to see. Flickering red like pretty little flames. Your eyes can't hide it, Kris. Without play, the knife grows dull. I have my thoughts on what this could mean, which I'll get to later, but this isn't the only reference to eyes that burn in Deltarune. The bird icy pizza box from the Phantom sweepstakes had specifically its eyes burnt, so that it couldn't blink again. Eram also sets itself on fire during the fight. I understand stuff like Phantom sweepstakes exclusive info shouldn't be taken as gospel, as Toby himself said he only sees what actually happens in-game as canon, but considering the pattern of what gets shown in the sweepstakes and what actually happens in-game, like a lot of cat battles related stuff appearing as mic minigames, I feel like we can kind of consider them as such. Regardless of whether or not they do actually happen in-game, they can provide us some great understanding of what actually happens in Deltarune, kind of like the Matt Pattern Springtrap Empreg, or the Sam Hicks Tentacle Yaoi. Anyways, in general, Eram being IC related explains a lot of things. It explains why they seem to know Kris a lot, as I've already mentioned time and time again that Kris seems to be obsessed with ICE, and why they can seemingly read Kris's mind, or eyes I guess. They've quite literally been in Kris's head, plus them seeing in the dark could parallel that chapter 1 sign saying only eyes blinded by darkness can see the way, and well, you can certainly say the IC pizza box got blinded. It also explains how their shadow mantle can counter darkness creatures, as I've already mentioned how all of the snow icy stuff counters darkness. I guess it also somewhat explains how they will know about the weird route cause both revolve around eyes, plus there's a whole dog's temptation subversion thingy going on, which I explained earlier, and the weird route definitely sounds like a temptation subversion of some sorts, so that's probably another factor at play. Also the fact that their physical form is fully revealed in the video game shelter is quite interesting. The IC pizza box was supposed to be buried in the graveyard, which is also the closest location to the shelter, but Des took the pizza box away after Kris did the prank. Is it possible Des threw it inside the bunker? It's also interesting how the Eram boss fight is the only one where dying in-game makes you die in real life. Ooh, almost like they aren't actually from the game itself. Did they astral project the entire actual bunker in theory inside the cartridge or something? Well, IC certainly knows a thing or two about inserting itself where they shouldn't. This also makes Sean's connection to the Shadow Mantle a bit more interesting, as they also share a connection with Astral, you know, the pizza deodorant guy. Other minor connections include both Eram and ICE being referred to as a nightmare, which adds an extra layer to that one Toriel having a nightmare message after beating the knight. Eram's mouth resembling IC Nightmare's mouth somewhat. Both the Monster Kids Word Search and the IC's pizza logo have pink and yellow on the borders, often associated with Friend's eyes, and I already talked a lot on how IC is connected to Friend, plus red or orange in the middle, colors often associated with flames or burning. I repeat, burning eyes. There is one last thing that I want to highlight, and that's their dialogue with Kris. My interpretation of it is going to be a bit complicated and also a bit heavy, so bear with me. Returning to the concept of gallery and Pizza Fan's mention of it in regards to his co-workers, considering everything we've discussed thus far, it makes the gallery prophecy have quite an interesting alternative interpretation. You have the art gallery, with the portraits symbolizing ICE, contrasting Friend's silhouette behind it. What makes this so interesting is the other major mention of art, as in drawings. The chapter 4 Egg Room, Kris's art therapy. The main takeaway from it is that whatever this incident with the pointed tail was, which I believe is Friend, it was so traumatic that Kris has to block the bad memory using the X, and then also block the X with the trip. I believe this also has a double meaning though. In the Phantom sweepstakes, weeks before chapters 3 and 4 came out, there was an update that added various new pages. One of those was a page named Therapy, a completely black canvas that you can paint on with a white pen. It's safe to say this is a reference to Kris's art therapy, art that gets drawn with a white pen, controlled by you, that covers and contrasts an everlasting darkness in the background. Sounds familiar? I believe Kris isn't just using the eggs to block the trauma, they're also using Ice-E to try and fight it. Suddenly it makes perfect sense why they have such a big, somewhat ironic attachment to him. Ice-E definitely reminds Kris a lot of friend, while also being the opposite of it and countering it, in a way, kinda like Eram's shadow mentor countering dark creatures, and are using him as a comfort childhood character as a way to cope with the trauma, to tell themselves that it was all harmless, but it's clear they are still terrified of it, and actually are probably perfectly aware of this. This is the part of the video where I will start talking about self-harm. I'm not going to go into graphic detail, so hopefully it isn't anything too major, but it's the timestamp to skip this part if you need to. Now, I'm not a psychologist, so I'm extremely sorry in advance if I get stuff wrong about this very sensitive topic. I'll try my best to treat it with the utmost respect. I also kinda suck at character analysis, so feel free to jump at me in the comments if I get something wrong. It's heavily implied that Kris engages in self-harm of some sorts, with their soul removal happening long before we arrived, probably as some form of it. Self-harm can be another form of coping mechanism, usually used to assert control over themselves, when they feel like they're going nowhere. This perfectly parallels them taking control when taking us out of their body. They are hurting themselves just so they can have control. I've also seen some people theorize that Kris may also cut themselves, considering that they always bring a knife with them and the ominous bloodstain in the room, both things that Susie points out, meaning they're important, but they don't necessarily mean that Kris cuts themselves. Still, it's a possibility. Anyways, I feel like Ice-E could very well be bordering on that, hurting themselves when engaging with him to assert their dominance and control over their trauma, or maybe as a form of punishment to take responsibility over Death's disappearance and fight the trauma with another much smaller trauma. This makes Ice-E connections to pain even more striking. It's unclear whether or not Kris is a masochist, someone who enjoys this pain somewhat, but the question of whether or not Kris is a bit of a sadist, someone who enjoys inflicting pain onto others, is an easier answer. I recommend watching this video by Stuffed Alpaca, who is far better than me at doing character analysis and goes much more in depth on their psyche. As for me, I do have my own interpretation. I believe Eram is right in this case, that at least part of Kris enjoyed the weird route, knowing that it wasn't real them. I feel like their prankster personality may have a role in that. Kris has always been a bit of a prankster, long before Death's disappearance as seen from that Ice-E sightings post. After her disappearance though, I believe Kris started developing dissociation as another coping mechanism, and they started developing sadistic tendencies through their pranks. And Ice-E is one of the main source of pranks. As science puts it, the more you distance yourself, the less you will hurt. The more easily you can bring yourself to hurt others, or as Eram puts it, without play, the knife grows dull. Fighting their trauma head-on hurts. It's easier to dissociate yourself and close yourself to others, and let yourself open to your worst tendencies and intrusive thoughts, using your trauma as a weapon to feel better. This can be best seen in the weird route, where your control over them, and in turn their dissociation and prank severity are at an all-time high, at least from an outsider's perspective, like Noel. I can't stress this enough. While part of Kris may enjoy this, they do not want to hurt people. I repeat, they do not want to hurt people. This is all on us. Dissociation is a clear character flaw of them, and an unhealthy coping mechanism that they use to block and ignore their issues instead of fighting them head-on, which can lead to people getting hurt. Sounds familiar? Yeah, the Dreamers in general aren't really known for their healthy coping mechanisms. I think it's kinda ironic how Toriel and Asgore are opposites on how they fight their issues, one through fighting to the point of absolute obsession, and the other by blocking and neglecting it. And Kris somehow learned both of these coping mechanisms, and somehow uses them in even worse ways. At least one good thing about the weird route is that Kris doesn't want to dissociate and lose control anymore after the frozen chicken incident. too bad they out as other plans. I also believe it's no surprise that X symbolizes Kris's blocked bad memory. I want to give a shout out to SofaKing404 from my previous video's comment section, as their woo made me realize that they use the X to pull harmless pranks, but while they believe it's Kris' way to confront the trauma, I already talked a lot earlier about how I believe Kris is actually doing the exact opposite, neglecting the trauma instead of confronting it. X do have a symbolism of responsibility after all, and Kris is putting their responsibilities away. One last thing before moving on to chapter 4, the Forgotten Man's dialogue from earlier. I believe the Forgotten Man was Kris's therapist. Hopefully this assumption isn't that much out there, as it seems to be a pretty popular take in the fandom. Once upon a time, the world looked like this. It's possible he's referring to his time with Kris, trying to help them with their bad memory. Then, the earth was covered in water, dinosaurs appeared, an ice age. I believe the Forgotten Man is referring to the Dark Fountains, Susie and Ice-E. Not necessarily in that chronological order. Now, what do all three have in common? I believe they're all three the major things Kris uses to distract themselves from their issues. The Dark Fountain adventures, their friendship with Susie, their ironic obsession with Ice-E. But they're also the main reasons Kris is currently fighting these issues. Remember that I said that Kris both blocks their trauma by finding ways to ignore it and fights it to self-harm and grabbing themselves through the silly strings. Although this last one, ironically enough, when they are forced to. With Dark Fountains and Susie, it's because of Carol's plan. They have to remove their soul to make Dark Fountains and stop Susie from getting the guitar. With Ice-E on the other hand, look, I made an entire section explaining how they use it to fight their trauma. But there is one last aspect of it that I haven't mentioned yet. Ice-E looks to be very much connected to the Weird Route, mainly because of how they both are in Noel's eyes, seen as pranks, and because of the whole Eram deal, plus Ice-E is an ice cube and... So it's interesting how the third reason Kris removes her soul is, at least in the Weird Route, to try and remedy the effects of the chapter through Weird Route events. They are pretty much fighting their trauma, thanks to their hurtful soul removal. Anyways, one very last thing. The Forgotten Man continues after that. In any case, this island is the only place left I can talk. But one day this island will disappear too. We may not meet again in that case. I believe this is because he isn't needed anymore due to those three elements listed earlier, which Kris uses to cope. This is why he's being forgotten. So, that's pretty much it for chapter 3. This was definitely the hardest one to talk about yet. I promise the chapter 4 section is going to be more light-hearted. In the Teens Corner, the Ice-E wearing a headband from chapters 1 and 2 got replaced with a post that states that Ice-E's mascot is being replaced due to licensing concerns. I really wanna take this at face value, but considering that they only had a single customer, something tells me they're trying to rebrand because of low sales. The interesting part though is that Kris has a feeling of immense dread, which, yeah, I mean it's their comfort character basically. Or maybe it's because they know this will put him in discarded secret boss territory or something. Is Nightmare gonna be a new mascot? Speaking of replacing something, the Ice-E statue from Kris's room gets placed in Ralsei's new room, which he doesn't really feel happy about. Ralsei's not an Ice-E head, how disappointing. Moving on to Noel's house, in their basement there's an Ice-E hoodie? What the hell is that thing even? It does remind me of that one inflated Ice-E from the dog shrine back in Undertale, which I forgot to mention up until now. Also Noel says this. So, there's this guy that gets really mad about games, and made this goofy horror series about this bucket with Ice-E face that tries to kill him. Didn't expect the beta game button guy from earlier to be referenced here.
Hey, I'm Mr. Bucket.
Oh, no.
It's okay. I don't want to hurt you. I just want to suck on your balls.
Alright, I'll add another connection between Ice-E and friend. One's made of balls, the other wants to suck them.
Mike,
What do you mean his friend on the phone is called Mike? How deep does this rabbit hole go?
I was in bed, the bucket came under the blankets, and it talked to me.
Porcacci salamin, sconto al conat, quanto è vero Dio ti faccio capo a muro, Ice-E. Io ne sto scendo pazzo, ne esco pazzo da sto video. Sto impazzendo, sono pazzo. In Chapter 4's Church Dark World, there are no direct mentions of Ice-E. This is because IC was abandoned by God. But if you recall from earlier in the video, I teased one last thing related to jumbling that's from chapter 4. I feel like you may already know it. It's from the Roots room. There's this organic who says they have heard something in between. It was mixed up. The following text is a jumbled sentence that when put together says, "Lost where the forest will grow, the children followed the pointed tail. The poor children." The common consensus for what this means is that one day Kris, Noel and Des, and maybe Azrael too, went into hometown's forest, maybe went somewhere or followed something they shouldn't have, and Fran, who's associated with the Tale of Hell, kidnapped Des and brought her to the shelter. I don't have much to add other than this being another solid connection between Ice-E and Fran. We will probably get further explanation of what the hell happened there in chapter 5, Asgore's flower shop chapter, as Gerson describes it as the field of pink and gold. The vast garden is charred in an inferno of jealousy. Wait, you know what else is heavily associated with gardens and flowers other than Asgore? Azrael, of course, because of Flavi, your best friend, and also your best nightmare. Chapter 5 Secret Boss is Omega IC. Okay, this sounds very out there, but please bear with me. I have evidence. It's not particularly good evidence, but it's still evidence, I swear. You gotta believe me, so please strap in, because the things I'm about to say are going to sound like the dumbest things that are ever going to come out of my mouth, but you have already gotten this far into the video. You're balls deep into this. Like Mr. Bucket, you can't back out now. So, anyways. The Roots motif, which is heavily linked to Friend and Eram, kinda uses the your best nightmare motif. Which, yeah, while it's probably because of the whole nightmare stuff, this still links Omega Flowey to them, and in turn IC as well. Plus it makes your best nightmare's juxtaposition with your best friend that much more interesting because of IC's juxtaposition to, well, friend. All of Gerson's book chapters progressively seem to refer to secret bosses more and more, so we can assume that chapter 5's description is heavily linked to what the secret boss is gonna be about. Speaking of which, the Inferno of Jealousy is very widely accepted to be attributed to Asgore, the flower man trapped in asylum, whose ex-wife got stolen by a cartoon skeleton she met 3 days ago. Although Asgore seems to be more like the main boss instead of the secret one, I feel like the Inferno of Jealousy can be better applied to Kris and Eram/IC because of the whole burning eyes thing which I described earlier, and because I feel like they are linked to jealousy a fair amount. I already talk about Kris and how they want to be more like Azrael, a more successful sibling, so that definitely can count as some form of jealousy. Plus, Azrael definitely has a major role in chapter 5 from what I discussed earlier. With IC though, I'll have to do a bit of speculation. I mentioned that IC's mascot is slated to be replaced, and jokingly mentioned how that will put him in discarded secret boss territory. Now, what if this new mascot is miles more successful than the older Ice Cube one, combined with how the festival will definitely grant the pizzeria a larger influx of people? That's definitely bound to happen, right? That will surely make the old IC Cube jealous, don't you think? Plus, it will parallel Kris and Azrael's sibling relationship, with one being somewhat jealous of the other, more successful one. While the idea of getting Ice-E as a somewhat secret boss twice sounds very iffy, if you assume Eram is the burnt IC pizza box, you gotta remember just how many loose threads are left unsolved with the sword route. Eram hinting at them having work to do before giving the mantle to Kris, which, yeah, to be fair, this work to do could simply be, well, them being the shadow mantle, but then we also have stuff like Ram getting kidnapped, and chapter 5's build up seems to be a very important one, the biggest one since chapter 2. There's a lot of build up for something that's sword route relevant to happen in chapter 5 specifically. There's more proof in favor of that, but but it will make for an entire video on its own, so I'll just recommend you the Roots theory by GoldPro. Man, pretty much every single theory I ever mentioned this one at least once nowadays. Maybe Omega IC is gonna be like Phantom Neo, where there are two different fights, one as a secret boss and one as a weird route boss. Maybe Eram's gonna take over the fight or something if you did a sword route, I don't know. Anyways, I also recommend watching this video by Boy G regarding Ramb, as he convinced me that this character is possibly going to be very important in chapter 5 to support the smaller creators than me. Asgard's flower shop seems heavily connected to both roots areas, having a prevalence of brown and green, plus plants have roots, obviously, and with how they seem to be connected or are similar to a sewage system, shoutouts to toilet theory, I have a feeling we are going to see the ICE bat bombs again. Maybe they could be coming from the sink, memory head style, a literal bad memory coming back to haunt Kris. The negative space of the memory heads kinda looks like Eram, so I guess I'm not that far off. Alternatively, if it isn't in the flower shop, I see its pizza location as a double set of doors, and every single Dark World so far was made in a location with double doors, with the exception of the Dreamur household, but chapter 3 in general is an outlier in many things. I see Dark World possibly. Multiple Dark Worlds isn't something out of the question with chapter 5 in particular. Toby hinted at a special guest making boss bullet patterns for chapter 5. The most popular candidate I have seen is Zun, the Toho project guy. His bullet patterns in his games are definitely something. I personally believe something Toho style will be very hard to implement when working with such a small battle box, but in an Omega Flowey style battle that covers the entire screen, that's much more likely. I've already mentioned Toriel having a nightmare, probably references Eram, and by extension ICE. Could they be having a nightmare about Omega IC too? Maybe Toriel's going like, oh no Kris is doing the shadow crystals, they're gonna have to fight Omega IC or something. Ralsei seems to be an important character for chapter 5, and if we follow the secret boss's pattern, it's possible the last secret boss is gonna be Ralsei-centric, which does kinda fit with everything else. He seems to be concerned regarding IC, although to be fair, everyone, even the narrator is. He is probably considered to be some sort of comfort character or imaginary friend for Kris, like IC, and he does seem to be connected to flowers, which, well, Omega Flowey. Wait, why does it tweet say mixed up? Oh my god, is Omega IC going to jumble Ralsei into submission? Wait, isn't Ralsei's name already a jumbled version of Azrael? Dude, I swear to god, if Ralsei is IC. Still speaking about the Ralsei-centric stuff, I've seen many people thinking about possible chapter 5 Saint secret boss fight. Now, I think this will be awesome as hell, and it's actually my second pick for the secret boss. But from the looks of it, this one seems to be the last Shadow Crystal boss, so I feel like the actual boss will be something grander and less fanservicey. Okay, I guess Omega IC will be something pretty fanservicey, but hey, it's a Deltarune original character, so it doesn't count. Okay, I guess Sense is also a Deltarune original character, but we have first seen him on Undertale, so Omega IC is still more original. There is a popular theory that says that secret bosses are going to feature the Undertale soul mods in reverse order compared to the fallen humans. GoldPro made a nice video on that, link in the description. I have already talked of how the spelling bee reminded me of the purple souls attack in the Omega Flowey fight, using words to hurt you, and with how IC is connected to word puzzles like word scrambles, word search, spelling bee. That would make Omega ICE the perfect candidate for the purple soul. In general, everything inside the flower shop looks to be able to get assembled into an Omega Flowey-like creature, mainly the TV and all of the various vines, and maybe the attacks could be like, I don't know, IC bat bombs or something, or the green deodorant as the flamethrowers. Asgard's TV is particularly interesting though. We know of a certain IC the movie, also Sans references Beauty and the Beast when talking about Asgard keeping flowers in glass. It doesn't seem like Omega IC could use any soul powers other than the Upformation purple, unless the 7 flowers hold the power of the souls somehow. So could they use the TV to switch between attacks based on movies and shows perhaps? Tena style? Speaking of which, wasn't there a TV show associated with Asgard? Something about a cowboy show. Oh my god, it's Fred inside me again! I'm telling ya, Fred inside me is gonna be one of Omega IC's attacks. Look, the last one will be the purple soul's power strings. There's a curtain, the curtain from chapter 3, the IC van, with the curtain, with the cowboy curtain in the secret room. I swear I'm not crazy. Wait, why are the lights steaming? I'm not done yet. You can't silence me. You won't. Get back here, you cowards. Well, why the hell am I here now? Well, at least I still have the footage. There is one last thing I need to talk about before wrapping up the video. Don't worry, it's something much calmer. Wait, I'll try to do this. Wait, now I don't appear in the frame. Wait, isn't there a way to like rotate the footage? Oh my god, I could just do this instead. Let me get the camera back to its original rotation then. Okay, let's continue. Near the pizzeria, before going to Noel's house, there's Pizza Pants preparing for his date with Pizzarina, which, yeah, I already mentioned it's actually better with a JPEG of a pizza. Anyways, Pizzarina of course never showed up to the date, although she later texted Pizza Pants that she left some Pizza Pants shaped cookies near the festival. I'll play the rest of the clip. I did leave a crucial detail from all of this. This time in chapter 4, Brat is bringing Ice Cream Guy into this prank and transferring the Pizzarina personal responsibility to him. And it looks like Ice Cream Guy wants him to be happy, and considering the sprite from the chapter 5 sneak peeks, something tells me he's also gonna dress like Pizzarina for him at the festival. That screams like she's actually real face. Yeah, this smells like obvious yaoi. The funny thing is, I believe the whole nobody chooses who they are in this world thing was also because Hometown was queerphobic or something due to them being highly religious, the only proof being that the lesbian fish and the bisexual dinosaur weren't together. But then in chapter 4 the royal guards are openly gay and in the church of all places, so yeah, I couldn't have been more wrong. I have a feeling Nice Pants Yao isn't gonna end well though, cause Pizza Pants looks like the straightest guy ever. Also, oh Nice Pants, you're no Azrael Pants. So, I guess that's it. I don't ever have to talk about IC again unless he actually becomes a major character in chapter 5, then I guess I would have to do a follow-up and explain his deal in chapter 5. For this one I really wanted to double down on the entertainment aspect. Hopefully I managed to make this video entertaining, cause it isn't really a theory video with a point like my previous video, so I didn't feel like the concept alone would be able to carry this one. Of course, in the cases where I actually had something meaningful to say that wasn't complete brain rot, or me pointing at the screen and being like, hey, isn't that weird? I did actually try to make it a serious thing, like with pizza deodorant, ironically enough. So yeah, I really hope you actually enjoyed this one. I'll probably now just wait for chapter 5 to come out before making another one of these, as I still have to work on uni, and I don't really have other stuff that I feel could make for a nice meaty video. I only decided to make a video where I feel like I have something to share that no one else seems to have done. Also because too many people seem to believe that theorizing in Deltarune isn't that fun anymore, and I really wanna prove them wrong with entertaining, off the wall insane, but also genuinely interesting theories at the same time. I really want to highlight the other ways to see the game, because I truly do feel like there is a lot of untapped potential for fun, meaty theories like these ones I've released. They don't have to be one-to-one predictions of what is gonna happen, just make something fun and endearing, and in line with the game's themes and paralleling as many things as that we can think of. As I said at the beginning of this video, this is the main reason why I have fallen in love with theorizing for this game so much. Like and subscribe, because it will make me happy. Also follow me on Twitter, cause if I end up being right, I'll probably brag about it there, and it will be pretty funny. What else? Okay, bye.